there's no parking except for residents, by application, we need to have a way of identifying ourselves as residents. Maybe a sticker or a decal or something on our vehicle.
Permit parking.
Well, we didn't think it was our role to suggest whether you have permanent parking or not, because that's a broader issue than this. But you, as a resident, you know, you can park there, period, because that impacts the way you reside. The idea is to try to disincentivize people by changing the route that someone mentioned, and then this. And with having a roving police officer who enforces it. I had a friend in Oregon Hill told me that there was some property that had not been developed over in the Overlook area. And some guy came there on an event and put in cones and sold parking spaces on property he didn't own.
That was my tenant's
If I
father.
can just really quick on an enforcement thing, for these big events, what I'm hearing is that there will be police force in the neighborhood stationed at the entranceways. If you all think about, I think it was River Rock last year, where we worked with the police to change how people coming and going from the neighborhood were able to access it. I think we can do a little bit more like that and get the commitment from Venture Richmond that police force is paid for and covered by the promoters of these events, so that it's not on the back of all of us, the taxpayers. But in terms of the signage, it has worked relatively well with the stadium, but then again, they don't have the big University of Richmond football games anymore. The best analogy is going to be Berg Park during the July 4th fireworks, when they have 70,000 people come into Berg Park, and as you know, there's not much available parking there. And what the operations team with Richmond Police Department had done is create a program with the neighborhood association, and it's basically a code that they give out to the residents through the listservs and things like that. It's a code, right? If the residents choose to give the code out to more people, that's the residents' choice. But there's a system in place to protect the residents to give you your access, so that if you want to have your party and have your 10 friends, you're going to give out the code most likely. But that's something that becomes monitored a little bit more by the neighborhood, but it's already something that the Richmond Police Department has done with the fireworks at Berg Park. Just to tell you, and this is the reality of these big events, the moment you put any restriction in, it pushes. Right? The moment there's a boundary put up, it pushes. And so what you're going to end up probably experiencing is that pushes people maybe further into the uptown area, further into the Randolph area, and that's just something to be mindful of. With the fireworks in Berg Park, it had originally been only the Carillon neighborhood that had the pass code, and we've expanded it now to Berg Park. That's just because everybody then went to the other side. Real quick, if I may, Bill.
Yeah, please.
On the July 4th, I know that there's ideas and concepts here, and that there's already the July 3rd fireworks. The July 4th fireworks have been held at the Carillon for years, and there's already Dogwood Dell there that has been a city asset for a long period. And just from talking to people in those neighborhoods, they don't want to lose their fireworks. They don't want for the fireworks to move locations, and that's a city-sponsored event, so I think we just need to make sure that...
Yeah, our fireworks event is July 3rd. We're not talking about doing fireworks on the same night that they do fireworks at Dogwood Dell. We'll stay on the same day that we've been using.
We had that parking thing where the police were at the doors, that blocked off the streets, and that worked beautifully. We'd all love to have that.
Well, this might be out of the scope. This might be out of the scope, but what's involved in converting Oregon Hill to permanent parking? I mean, what do we?
There's an ordinance that any 10 contiguous blocks can petition, and you need to have more than 50% of either the homeowners or 60% of the renters sign that petition to become a restricted parking district. And we've brought the people from the city in here to have that conversation. I know at least once or twice. But it's not gonna be led by the city. It has to be something that the neighborhood feels committed, that this is something that they want, and it has overwhelming support.
It also costs money. A lot of people balk at paying for parking.
You have to buy
I
the
didn't hear that.
permit,
What's that?
right?
Yes, you have to buy, it's $25 a year.
Can you say that again? Pam?
Oh, it's $25 a year, I think, for the parking permit, right?
The way that the ordinance is set up is that any parking district gets to set its own
Oh, okay.
rules. So
It was
if the parking
$25.
district said, hey, we want to do it this way, you can do it that way. One thing that happened with the fan parking district is it is $25 per vehicle that's registered. They basically had an unlimited register your 20 cars that are all sitting in the backyard type of situation, where they now have more cars registered in that district than there are available spots. But that's typical, you know, there's turnover and people aren't always home. But, so that's where these districts need to be created with the idea of what the use is. But I think that's a separate conversation.
Yes,
and
let's
we
not
can stay
derail the
on this.
conversation talking about the parking permit. I do have a quick question that I'll take advantage of having the floor. I would like to hear a little more about the city having to approve or disapprove events. Exactly who is going to be doing this approving and disapproving, and is the neighborhood going to have any sort of say in this?
If I did not mean to say, and I don't think I said that they approve or disapprove. We tell them what the event's gonna be, what's gonna be involved and so forth. And then we tell them what we think we should do in light of that event. Then they tell us what we should do. And whatever they tell us we have to do. But it's not approving or rejecting the event, it's what the event management plan that we have to implement. And this is not something we have been doing. It's we think a quantitative and quality step forward, because it does put on the going inside, if you will, so that we know what we have to do, not after the fact. Yes, ma'am.
Just as a question on that, would that potentially override these rules that you're talking about the curfew at 10 o'clock for weeknights and the 11 o'clock for weekends?
No, they would
Okay.
not.
So that would
It's
not
sort
be
of
a
in
question.
conjunction with the proffers, the extra, we will have to comply with the standard regulations for the downtown culture and civic, plus what we proffer and approve, and then the event management plan. So that would be, that was more of an implementation of the requirement.
You had mentioned something about an event like July 4th or July 3rd fireworks, it potentially being up to the administrative officers to go away from that. How would that?
Only for an event during the week. During the week, we have certain limitations on how long the event can go. And so, for example, and I use this only as an illustration, for a July 3rd firework, it could go longer than 11 o'clock. 10 o'clock if the chief executive officer says that. But it's only that's the only exception, otherwise.
So there is some discretion on the time of weekday events.
Only that.
July 3rd happened to be on a Tuesday, and you can't start the fireworks until dark, and the event's gonna run a little late, that's when we would seek an
But it
exception.
would be specific to July 3rd, not that there could be an exception seeked for
Oh, no.
any weekday event
No,
that you all
no.
chose to ask for.
Skrillex.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious about if I remember correctly, you said that there are requirements in order for the zoning to get the property rezoned, and that the Venture Richmond was going to proffer some additional items. What are those additional items, and once they're proffered, would those then be written as a contract into the zoning requirements where they could not be withdrawn later because they are over and above the requirements?
Answer to that is basically they would be approved by the city as part of the planning commission, and more importantly, the city council. And once they're in there, they cannot be changed unless you come back and ask that the proffer be changed and go through the whole process. So those proffers dealing with the event management, the sound, those other things would be part of the requirements on it.
Just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
Steve, would some of those things that you're proffering, would those be the decimal requirements, the additional parking, policing, the restrictions on parking? Are those the other items that you're referring to that you're going to proffer? What exactly is it that you're offering?
In the general terms, yes, the extra police is more part of, one is the, in short version, the rest will make sure I summarize it correctly. One is the limitation on the events and the hours of the events. That would be one. Other is the sound requirements, and then the other is the parking and that type of thing, traffic. And then the third would be, as part of the event management plan, the police could tell us, for this event, you need to have X number of police officers there. And that would be there, that would not be specified in the proffer, but the event management plan would give the city the authority to do that, and we'd have to comply with it.
And just one follow-up to that, you asked about the decibels. That's actually controlled by the existing noise ordinance in the city. So we would have to, at a baseline, comply with the city's existing ordinance. But then in addition to that, the event management plan would say who's going to be monitoring the sound from Venture Richmond's point of view, and who has the authority to then pull the plug if the promoter isn't complying with what the existing rules are. So it's going to provide a little bit of extra protection, which is what we've seen other promoters or other groups like Maymont do successfully. That's not in Maymont's proffers, they just do it because they don't want to be in trouble with the neighborhood and they realize that it's going to create problems for them. We think that's a good idea, and so it would be something that would be part of that event management plan. So the proffer says you have to produce the event management plan in advance.
You gotta get this done.
Yeah, you had mentioned decibel levels. It's certainly very important to us because that's what is disturbing about these events as well as the parking. You mentioned the symphony orchestra. Symphony orchestra, unamplified, it's 90 dB. This is the same as a jackhammer at 500 feet. So that's why the violin players wear headphones. So that's probably going to be some of the mildest form of entertainment down there. Would you consider a lower decibel level as measured from Oregon Hill limits? Something at 90 dB, that's where a sustained 90 decibel signal is where hearing loss begins.
Where is that measured, 90? At the people who are playing the
Wherever
music?
it's measured, as long as it's 90, you know, if it's 90 dB, it's 90 dB, whether it's, 100 miles away or, right next to the speaker. But that's, I think, a concession in the form of a decibel reading, not necessarily measured by Venture Richmond, but, you could get a decibel meter, for $15 or, you could get an app on your phone. I would say if we, something like a 70 dB limit, and if two measurements come out at 70 in the presence of an officer, then the event gets shut down. That would certainly help abate disturbances.
But we'll take a look at that, because the idea of, and I didn't get into it in detail, is that we, Venture Richmond, will have a responsibility, and will have the person who needs to do that. And that has, we've talked to our friends at Maymont, and that's what they do. And they sometimes, the person who's running the sound system is really into it. Venture Richmond needs to have the authority, and so we can look into that.
the city's noise ordinance wouldn't allow 90 decibels.
It's a very nebulous noise ordinance. I don't think it's constitutional. I don't think it's enforceable, really.
And that's why we agree that there needs to be an affirmative obligation of Venture Richmond to monitor it themselves.
What
and
we're
that's why-
asking for is a specific limit at the premises, at the border of Oregon Hill.
Okay.
That would certainly ameliorate a lot of the contention in this room, I think.
Well, we can get back, I assume, Jennifer, all this communication can come back through you. Congratulations.
Yes, you can send me anything.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Everybody is talking about the decibels at the outside. I face the river on Pine Street is my address, but it's actually facing the river. And it's horrible. It's much worse inside my house than it is out. The windows rattle, the floor vibrates. It's horrible. And you know that it's way too much when your sternum starts vibrating. So, and I mean, it is horrible inside our houses.
Well, I think this gentleman's suggestion, if we can find the enforceable, reasonable level at the entrance, at the areas of Oregon Hill, can help address that.
Well, it's not the music, it is the driving bass. I work here, the music.
And it's the ones from Browns Island now.
Yeah, the ones
Is this gonna be in
now,
addition to all the concerts on Browns Island?
That's
We'll be
because
closer.
It happened at the same time.
Yeah,
There
they-
potentially be two concerts.
Yeah.
No, they would not happen at the same time. And the Brown Island, from what we're trying to sort of control what we're doing on this property. Yeah, Chuck?
Well, you're correct. The Folk Festival, it does happen at the same time. We have events.
Yeah, I'm talking about whatever they call it now, Friday cheers or whatever, you know. We hear them in our neighborhood today. I don't know what the decibel level is, but we hear them.
I actually had a neighbor call me from across the street, which she brought up Skrillex. They called us and said, "Can you turn the music down? Is that you?" And that was like a block and a half into Oregon Hill from our house. And we were like, no.
That concert would be very carried out.
It was
Yeah,
insane.
That concert was a disaster.
Yeah, but we had to live with it.
And we apologize for that. We allowed a private promoter to come rent the island and produce that show. And we did some research and the reports came back that it's gonna be okay. It was not okay. And we will never allow a group like that to rent our island again. We made a mistake. And it was very unfortunate. I know there were huge impacts, not just in Oregon Hill, but all over. And it was embarrassing. We apologize for that.
Thank you, yeah.
We do not want that to happen. We do not want that to happen.
But yeah, it was a week like
Ms.
that.
Bowie?
Since we're talking about the Crawfords, make it easy, we came up with a list here of some of our concerns. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing just to go down this list and say whether you agree to it or don't agree. We started with limited 12 days per year with amplification, and you agree to that?
We agreed to 15 days with 12 larger. Let me get that from you or somebody, and then we can get
We
back.
just want to go down right now so you're aware of what our concerns
So
are.
that's good.
The curfew, in your correspondence, you said 10 p.m. weeknights ending, and Friday is a weeknight. Now you're saying, well, Friday's a weekend. That's a concern. The decibel level, we had our own decibel expert, Will, here, who took some outrageous readings during the Folk Festival. And I can certainly counter your outrageous contention that it was only 3 decibels over normal.
The DC,
The free shuttle to off-site parking, Parker Angelosta very kindly provided the ordinance for the Architectural Museum on Lyman Avenue. They provide free shuttle to free parking. And that's what we need here. If you're going to invite 10,000 people, we need you to provide the free parking and the free shuttle, just like you do at the Folk Festival. The resident-only parking signs, it sounds like y'all are agreeable to that. The hiring of policemen,
that was kind of nebulous whether the city would hire that. We want Venture Richmond to be hiring that. The trash pickup after every concert, Riverside Park is just trashed. You know, we need for you to take responsibility, be a good neighbor and come to the after each event and pick up the trash. And only free events. This is very critical because the lease, the city lease, which Venture Richmond signed of the city property, specifies that it's public access all the time. You know, is that something that you're if you can go down this list here and tell us whether these are things you agree to or don't agree to, then
Many I do, many with some modification, but I think it'd be better for me to get that list and put together a more authoritative response, something that you can rely on, and because to do it off the top of my head.
is there going to be a negotiation period, or are you going to go out and apply for the zoning next day, tomorrow?
No,
are you going to delay and try to work out these issues?
we have not filed, and we're waiting for this meeting. This meeting was set up in January, and then it snowed, and then there was February, there was a conflict in Parker's schedule, and now we're March. So yes, we would be glad to sit down and have, you know, a small negotiating group and just work through the best we can. That is the way it's usually done, and that's the way, quite frankly, it's most effective.
That's before you apply for the zoning?
Yes, sir. And if we can't agree, then, you know, you have to make certain decisions and we have to make certain decisions, you know. But I do think that the effort is well worth it. After 35 years, I've never seen a case that didn't benefit small groups, representatives sitting down. So we'd be glad to do that. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about the proffers. Do you have those drafted at this point, and
No.
can they be made available?
Well, no, we can draft them as part of this negotiating process, but the concepts is what we have now. But we summarize those, but we can do that, and that would be a reasonable request because you want to see what you're buying.
Yeah, we want to negotiate on, you know,
Right.
clear text on white
Yeah,
paper.
we can do that.
Bill, if I may, on one point, in terms of the delay, negotiate, things like that, I think we need to highlight the fact that Dominion River Rock is scheduled for May, what's the date? Some date in May. And under the current zoning with the Greek Festival ordinance of the 4 days in a 365-day calendar, it was used for the Folk Festival, and then in May it's going to get used again for River Rock. So I think that there's a little bit of urgency to get some compliance and some closure on this.
We're not going to use the site for River Rock.
This year.
Because that would put us over a 4-day limit. But we would like to have the ability to use it for River Rock 2060, which means we need to get the zoning in place before May 2016, so that we might stage some events related to River Rock over there.
Yeah, this lady.
I don't understand proffers on the land person, but my question is this, if we come to a mutually agreeable conclusion with regard to all the things you say you'd like to do and all the things we'd like to see done, in 2 years, do you come back and ask us for more? Or
In theory, you could, but I will tell you, in my 35 years experience, if you agree to set of proffers, you better stick with them, and if not, they'll make you stick with them. I mean, it's the city or the local government, because basically it's almost a three-party agreement. It's Venture, Richmond, Oregon Hill, and the city. And the city, out of the three, city has a pretty good hammer, and rightfully so. So yes, that theoretically yes, but in practice you just don't. Yes.
Does an M1 zoning allow you to have an amphitheater? I think it does. So in fact, the only reason you want to change to the DCC is to get rid of the parking requirement.
That is one of the uncertainties, yes,
And
and the number.
just to clarify, only the portion below the canal is M1, the portion above is RO3.
Yeah,
So
but,
this would
but
make it
isn't
consistent for
the,
entire-
place gonna be down there, the amphitheater, point to where the amphitheater itself will be?
Be a little easier to see.
Where the words M1 are.
So the amphitheater goes all the way up to the street. This is a grassy area here.
Yeah.
At the stage, point where the stage is.
The stage is down here and people sit all the way up the hill.
Top of letter 1.
So it's just sitting on grass.
So which way is the stage pointing?
That was
Yeah.
So the sound's going up the hill,
Well,
not out into the river.
Yep.
Might, you know.
I'd like to add one more thing to that, and that is if they will turn the amplifiers just inches towards the river, it'll keep it from hitting our houses at the overlook, and that makes a huge difference. They did it back in 2005, I think, and the people who lived there then said it was wonderful because they had nearly died the year before when it started there.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Is there anything in the, I know right now it's a great use to use as an amphitheater, but is there anything in the property that will present or keep it amphitheater use going forward? Because DCC does allow 95-foot office towers and hotels and stuff like that.
We would
So
have to proffer
could it be
it.
written into
You've broken the code. No, I'm joking. We would have to proffer out what we cannot do on the property.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
In a similar vein to the long-term use of the property, the historic Kanawha Canal runs right through it, and we've already seen damage to it. We've already seen a wall illegally demolished, supposed to be replaced, and I'm concerned that the turning basin area that was historically there is now altered. And, you know, there is a plan to rewater and basically reinvigorate the Kanawha Canal for future use. And I'm wondering how this fits in for long-term use of the property.
Well, I think the canal there is there, and this would not be inconsistent with that if that should come about. Am I misstating that, Jack?
We don't plan to make any changes to the canal towpath or the bed of the canal. We would like to see the canal rewatered. We think that would be an amenity, but we don't have any plans to do that. But if the city were able to accomplish that, I think it would be good for the property.
Right now, there's no historic markings there or anything. People just think it's a ditch. And I really implore the city to do the right thing, put up historic markers and make sure people understand what they're standing on.
Okay.
Yeah, we plan to do that. May take a while because there's money involved, but we would like to do that as well.
Well, I don't want
And the plan, just to go to what Scott said, as soon as we get warm enough, the wall that got torn down goes back out.
On city land.
Huh? On the city land, right, on the city land, that's the only thing I can control. But, you know, we've got a number of the bricks, we got new bricks, we got the mortar in place, we're waiting for days to warm up where the wall can go. So the wall will go back, and I know there has been some discussion about whether or not there's some sort of plaque that could go on that to talk about some things. So I think your point about commemorating the canal is a good point to take, that I think both Venture and the city could look at.
Well, why don't we, yes, sir.
One more.
That's all right.
I appreciate it. You know, a lot of times words don't really paint a mental picture. I want to paint a mental picture of what we go through that live down at the river end of Oregon Hill. Do you remember the ordeal in Waco when David Koresh was driven insane by the FBI playing music to where those people went nuts and begged him to be set on fire? We feel that way. I want you that image in your mind. That's now. That's now. Not later, not with changes. That's what we've already gone through. And I want you to keep that image in your mind because that's why we're upset. We don't want to tear down your character. We don't want to be against anybody here. But this is the hell we live in.
Right.
We have no reasonable expectation of the quiet enjoyment of our homes.
Well,
We've lost that. We've sacrificed that. It was stolen from us.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I want that particular image in my
I
mind,
want
but,
you to keep it there,
but
sir. We
I
have
do
to.
understand what you're saying. Well, we'll try to, Jennifer, we can work through you. We can get together 4 or 5 who you think are appropriate and start down this negotiation process. But we thank you.
Yeah, can I just say a couple things about parking, because I've been involved in this business almost as long as Bill's been involved in law, and I'm always amazed at how far people will walk for free parking.
Yeah.
At some point, you're gonna run up against parking district in the Fan and other places. My hope would be, and I've got it on my list to talk to Lynn, is that as we open up and take back and do more efforts in the parking decks to the downtown side, I am hoping that that will take some of the pressure off, because, you know, the mayor's budget has submitted about $1 million to make improvements to Kanawha Plaza. And I think if we can get Kanawha Plaza to feel like a welcoming place, the idea of people parking at Gateway Plaza and walking across the park in the 2 blocks down 7th is not that far. Getting the RMA deck, more hours at the RMA deck, walking down. I mean, I think there's things to do. The other thing that's not on here yet, because it's not under construction yet, is the Tyler Potterfield Memorial Bridge. I think when the Memorial Bridge goes, that's a 1/4 mile jaunt across the river, and I think that will open up a big chunk of the south side and parts of Manchester and other areas where people who might be coming from other places will walk across the bridge to Browns Island. So I think we don't know what we don't know, but I will say that I think as these other activities occur to open up parking, make it available parking longer in the day, the opportunities of the Memorial Bridge, bringing people from the south side, maybe they'll stay there and walk across. We're spending a lot of money to make that an attractive walkway. I think over time, and since I live east, I never come across the bridge, so I did not know you can't turn right on 2nd. Maybe there's some things we can look at that will stop forcing people to the left and help nudge them to the right.
Thank you.
Well, we greatly appreciate Parker being here, and Mark and Lori, because as I said at the onset, it's sort of a 3-way process, and so it's good that there's a, Joe, I'll follow up with you in a day or two, but thank y'all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.